everyone, and welcome once again to the vast and ominous Comic Vault. Hey, it's a live Comic Vault. I'm Captain Logan, and with me today I've got Steve Baxey.
Hello, everybody.
And Red Shirt Eric.
Hey, guys.
Wearing a white shirt.
He's a Batman shirt.
Ooh, cool. Today he's white shirt Batman Eric. Today, in great anticipation of Captain America Civil War, we're going to be talking about the comic event Civil War that, of course, that film is loosely adapting. And as a lot of you guys know already, I have seen an early screening of the film, and I will do my best. No, I won't just do my best. I will not spoil anything through this, but I'm going to be spending a lot of this time thinking of things that I'd love to say about how this correlates with that movie that I'm not going to be able to talk about yet. So I'm going to let these guys do a lot of the talking, and I will fill in here and there because let me start off by saying that, so this was, what, 07?
06 to 07, got back.
06 to 07, yeah, and this is a comic period where I was not reading current. So when this came out...
I started reading current just before this.
Me too. That's exactly where I started.
Interesting, because like maybe a year or two after this came out, I got it, and I was reading comics a lot, but I would buy things after the fact, and I didn't buy a lot of current. I would get the events just to feel like I was sort of caught up on the major things. And when I read this, I was not familiar with the status quo, so things seemed kind of wonky, and there were characters that I was not familiar with. And I had a similar experience this time going back to it because just the flavor and climate of the Marvel Universe is completely different in this from what it's been for the last
familiar with the status quo at the time. I read New Avengers, like, right around this, not too long ago, and I was kind of confused by some of the characters that were involved.
No, I mean, reading Captain America, reading Iron Man at the time, like, this is not user-friendly at all.
No, not even a little bit. And we'll get into that, because that's kind of my main complaint, is that it doesn't feel like a complete story to me.
Yeah, I don't think it does.
I was surprised. So many scenes I think of and problems I have with Civil War aren't in Civil War.
Are we looking at the same edition? Let's just make sure that we're reading exactly the same thing. It's just we're just looking at the 1 through 7, yeah?
Yeah.
I also read The Confession. I think Steve read The Confession as well.
Yeah, I read The Confession, too. I figured we'd talk about that towards the end.
Okay, cool, because I don't know what that is. I couldn't get... Eric mentioned that to me like 6 hours ago.
It's Civil War issue 8 written by Bendis.
Well, there was no way I could get my hands on that with that amount of short notice. I guess I could have looked it up online, but
you should have told me. I could have just sent it to you. I was reading everything online.
Yeah, I read everything online, too.
Well, fantastic. Well, I physically have it, so look, it's represented on screen, because this is live.
I physically have The Confession. It's in the New Avengers omnibus.
Yeah, I mean, I've got the issues, too. It's just a matter of, like, computers make it easier.
Yeah. No problem. Anyway, well, Eric or Steve, would one of you guys mind providing a little bit of context and some brief synopsis for folks that haven't read this in a long time, and to kind of get us all back in that headspace before we start tearing it apart?
Context, no. Synopsis, maybe.
Eric, you got nothing for context?
Context is tricky because the way Marvel pitched it and the way it kind of reads is that it's a culmination of a lot of events that happened before this. Like, Genosha's invoked a little bit. We get Avengers Disassembled plot threads. We get New Avengers plot threads. It's got nothing to do with the Captain America book. I'll go ahead and say that right now. If you were reading Brubaker Captain America, this doesn't meet it anywhere aside from the fact that Cap dies. And that doesn't even happen in this book.
It doesn't flow out of really anything that led up to it.
It did, because that was the thing with it. Like, I wanted to go back and read all the tie-ins because I figured it would help it make more sense, but all of the stuff I was reading at the time, because I was reading like 50 books back then, and none of it informs this at all. It's all stuff from the past.
Yeah, this book kind of acts like there's been, over a period of time, this growing adversity for superheroes and how they act, and there isn't.
Yeah.
If you go and read anybody else's books before this, there isn't. It's not in New Avengers. There's some stuff with Maria Hill in New Avengers and her not liking the Avengers, but that's it. There's no, like, a shift in public perception that the first issue of this is, like, the culmination of. It just starts.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess to be a little...
Well, it feels like it's right in the middle of something.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess to be a little bit fair, there's a thing in the first couple issues of Brubaker's Captain America where Cap is being more brutal than usual, and he's kind of a jerk, and they explain that later in the run. And they talk about public perception there, but that's all exclusively tied to Captain America. It's got nothing to do with superheroes at large.
Yeah, it's more PR for Captain America.
Exactly.
And Iron Man wasn't dealing with this at all.
No.
Extremis had just happened, and then the Knopfs were doing their first Dark Execute program. Also, nothing to do with this. The only adversity New Avengers was really running into was Maria Hill and S.H.I.E.L.D. Spider-Man wasn't doing anything with any of this. We'd just gotten past the good part of JMS's run, and then, like, Sins Past and stuff. So, like, Spider-Man wasn't dealing with this. No one, like, this kind of, it feels like it came out of nowhere if you read everything that came out right before Civil War.
Yeah. And then even a little bit like afterwards, right? Like there's a long list of consequences to this story that don't really feel like they came from this story. Like the moment this is over and we get into the Death of Captain America arc in Brubaker's run, Tony and Cap's adversity doesn't really play into it much at all. And then S.H.I.E.L.D. like tracking down non-registered superheroes doesn't play it into it at all.
Yeah, and of course this sets up a major status quo change where the people on the side of the Registration Act actually kind of win the day at the end, which it's been so long since I've read this, I didn't even remember that part of it. And I got to the end and I was like,
well what happens after is we have this big thing called the Initiative, which was essentially an excuse to launch a bunch of ongoings and miniseries of different super teams in different states. And no one remembers any of them, and none of them stuck. Not to say they were all bad. I really like the order.
Because they set all that, yeah, because they do set all that up at the end, and I thought it was really weird. What was it? Was it Michigan? I forget. There was a state that, like, requests the Thunderbolts, and I'm like, that sounds like a terrible idea. I don't understand that.
One of them got Beta Ray Bill. Somehow they forced Beta Ray Bill to register.
Yeah, I didn't understand that at all. Also, and I don't mean to jump around, but I had that, Eric, with a couple places, especially toward the end, where I was like, I thought this character had a particular stance, and then suddenly, just because of where they're standing, I'm confused. Like, Doctor Strange shows up, like if you're in, like, you don't even see his head. There's just like half of his body in a panel toward the end, where I guess he is with on Captain America's side now with the underground shadowy movement, and I'm like, but I thought he was kind of neutral and not getting involved, so what is he doing there?
If you want to see the fallout of Civil War, I would recommend reading the New Avengers stuff, because while the other books kind of gloss over it, New Avengers is actually a team in hiding, and they are staying at the Sanctum Sanctorum. Doctor Strange he's still kind of not taking sides, but he's also not going to sell his friends out, so he lets them stay there.
Should we talk about that for a second while we bring up Doctor Strange? Because I thought he was insufferable in this book. I think he's the thing I hate most.
He was my favorite part.
Really?
Yeah, insufferable. Wait, he's got a line that is so important for me to not think this is the most cynical thing I've ever read in Marvel.
Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange has this line when he's talking to the Watcher, where he's like, it's not up to him to draw lines, which is the stupidest thing I've ever heard him say.
Why?
Because all he is a religious quietist. He's literally a dude that spends most of his life interacting and dealing with things and breaches between the mortal plane and the not mortal plane. He's been involved with governments before. He's been involved with the Avengers before. For him to, like, have this attitude or arrogance to be above everyone is just out of nowhere. And it doesn't play with his character, but it's not consistent with like anything going on at the time.
See, I'm not reading that the way you're reading it. Now, I don't know that much about Doctor Strange, so that's informing you a lot, but I read it much more as Doctor Strange could easily solve this problem and just by snapping his fingers, and that doesn't seem like the right thing to do.
Yeah, that's how I took it too.
Are you saying he's constantly doing that? Are you saying that Doctor Strange has toppled fascist dictatorships like this, but this time he won't do it? Is that what you're saying?
He has literally restarted the entire universe. I mean, I feel like that's kind of the same thing.
But that's a much bigger thing. Like Doctor Strange exists on like a higher plane where he's dealing with things so far beyond everyone else.
But this
is a very human, very small, very personal conflict, and I feel like he could. Whoever side he picks, they win, essentially.
They win.
Yeah, he's not picking sides because the argument's bigger than
dealing with people's problems. He's solved Magic's problems before.
Well, see, Steve has this thing that comes up, which is totally fair, where he knows more than everyone else in the room, and he's informed by all these things that he's read that I haven't read. So
he did get rid of all the vampires.
I didn't think of that, but I do appreciate Steve that he at least like goes off on his own and doesn't like stand around while people are trying to decide what they're going to do about the Registration Act, because it occurred to me that every time the Watcher shows up and just stands there and stares, that is influencing people, right? Like the Watcher is supposed to not get involved, but the fact that he's there immediately means things are going down, and this is going to be a really...
Well, they see that in this story.
Yeah, they do that in the comic. It's weird.
Yeah, the Watcher shows up, and they're like, well, that means this is important.
Yeah, like people, it immediately influences people's choices. It probably influences what side people go on.
If you thought this was just going to blow over, the Watcher has shown up to let you know this is a Marvel event.
Yeah, I'm like, I hate Watcher. Do you not have the ability to be invisible? I don't understand why he doesn't... Like, is that a thing he can't do? Why does he have to be invisible when he watches
I don't know anything about the
people?
Watcher. He seems to be the most inconsistent character in the Marvel Universe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's got that imp thing where he can do whatever you want him to, but he also has whatever limitations you want him to have.
I finally understand Original Sin. Someone had to shoot that guy.
Yeah, I was going to say, finally, thank God somebody shot him in the face.
We should review Original Sin at some point, because
I've
only read it. I've only read it in issues over the months it came out, and I was loving it while I was reading it, but I haven't done it one sitting yet. So
I've read stuff about it. It sounds really good. I never read it either.
I just would never have thought to compare him and Nick Fury, and it's like it ends up being the best parallel ever. Anyway, this book, so. One thing I questioned for a second, let's just dive into this. One thing I questioned for a second, and we'll do a little synopsis stuff as we go, I suppose, because nobody jumped on and felt like doing a whole synopsis. When the book opens and there's there's a reality show filming, and you have these incompetent and irresponsible superheroes that end up getting a bunch of people killed in a town because a bad guy blows himself up because it's D-list superheroes going up against C-list villains, so they're going to lose. At first I was like, so that's going to be the catalyst for this whole thing, and then I was glad that there was a laundry list of things that had built up to this, but once again, since I hadn't read that stuff and didn't have that context, I didn't really appreciate it, where I was like, I wish I knew more about those things, and then that became my whole experience with this. Every issue I went, and I know there's stuff in between where I would appreciate this more. Like, I wonder if I wouldn't like this book a lot more. And like, you know, I read this years ago, didn't care for it. I read it today, still not in love with it. I think I liked it better than I did last time. Marvel movie stuff is informing it for me some. But I do, not just Civil War, even stuff before that. But, like, I feel like I haven't read it. Like, I feel like I've gotten the Cliff Notes version, and I've gotten, like, the big...
Well, and that's going to be the problem with the entire miniseries, is it feels like the Cliff Notes version, but if you dive into everything else, they're all contradictory. Every other book has their own definition and idea of what the Superhero Registration Act is. In one book, it's just kind of like this voluntary thing. And then in New Avengers... there are armed soldiers waiting outside of Luke Cage's house for it to turn over to 12 o'clock for the law to be passed to get him. Spider-Man's book is basically the opposite of Spider-Man in Civil War. It's just everything is like the problem is there is no full story here. You can't go read the tie-ins and get a complete piece because all the pieces are contradictory.
And I think
we had our wires
completely crossed over so much time too. Like, none of the books have like any sense of scale in relation to each other. So like, you're getting these massive time jumps between issues where laws have been written and laws have been passed and dates are approaching and things are going on, and none of these heroes are stopping to talk about anything going on in between. And so all the other books are supposed to fill that in, and they have no idea where the story is going.
Yeah, as this book reads, it sounds like they thought up, wrote a law, passed it, and then initiated it in like 3 days.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't tell you how much time passed throughout this book. I mean, in between issues, sometimes it feels like a lot of time has passed, and that's why I kept thinking, like, I'd get from, especially toward the middle, like, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, I'd be like, okay, and then there's a bunch of tie-ins that I should have read. Like, this is not like, Infinite Crisis or something where you don't have to read any tie-ins. It's a complete story.
Or Infinity Gauntlet.
Or Infinity Gauntlet, yeah. Well, and that's the big thing to compare it to, right? Because this is kind of the big Marvel event that anybody talks about post what Secret War is it? Well, yeah, I guess Infinity Gauntlet was after that. So yeah, Infinity Gauntlet. And this was the thing that got us to, because it was so popular, that got us to where we had to have an event every year, and now we have like 5. But like, do you think, Eric, that the problem was just they didn't know how to coordinate this because they hadn't done an event like this? Like,
probably, because if you read House of M, which precedes this by I think a year.
And I'm not
that
saying
was
there
their
were
big event right before this.
I'm just saying this is the most popular one since then for anybody.
No.
What
I was going to say is if you read House of M is very clearly Bendis wrote a story and then they had some tie-in issues. Although that's a little bit easier because it's an alternate universe. Whereas this, it feels like I wouldn't be surprised if you could argue that this wasn't written by Mark Miller. I wouldn't be surprised if, like, there were just so many cooks in the kitchen kind of a thing.
Well, it doesn't feel like it was written, right? Like Cav said before, it feels like Cliff Notes, and so like I've been trying to find like Millar-isms or Miller. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. I was trying.
There's
to
definitely some Millar-isms.
Okay, I was trying to find some of those, and some of them are there. I think the issue is just like we talked about this before, Eric, but like he did this better with Ultimates, right? So
and this started as an Ultimates idea.
Yeah,
and you can tell, like, there are several like Reed Richards is clearly informed by Ultimate Reed Richards.
Yeah.
Well, and they keep referring to Captain America. They keep saying it's not 1945. That makes way more sense to the Ultimates, where he just woke up.
Yeah.
Yeah, because at first I got what they were doing, but at first it felt like they were making a big deal out of this. It's modern day, things have changed, people got more cynical, people got more realistic. You can't tell superhero stories the way you told them in 1945. Like, that's the way I read that. And, of course, talking to Captain America, we're talking about Captain America actually waking up in the ice. But you're right, like, he's been out of ice for so long in this that it's like, why did it take... I guess one of my biggest problems with this is I just don't know why it took this long for the other shoe to drop.
Because they didn't think of the idea yet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's all it is. Yeah.
Well, it should be noted that the original pitch, as recounted by Jeff Loeb, I think, is that the original pitch was that it was not going to be superheroes versus superheroes. It was going to be S.H.I.E.L.D.
Oh, that makes sense. Actually, that might have been a better story.
Before we actually really get into this, can we all agree that everyone spent years of misplaced anger and aggression doing Team Iron Man, Team Cap? There is a definitive villain in this book, and it is Maria Hill.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, definitely. She forces it to happen.
The law isn't even passed, and she orders people to shoot at Captain America.
To go after Captain America. She's looking for a reason. I could not believe that line where she's a cardboard cutout in this. I couldn't believe, and I wasn't sure about that. Just looking at this as a piece, if I can at all, she seemed like a cardboard cutout. Like you said, if there's stuff that informs her, I didn't read that, but I couldn't believe it when she goes, a villain is somebody in a mask that doesn't follow the law. Shoot him! I was like, oh my god!
It's a really weird.
But there isn't a law yet.
Like, that's the
thing about that scene.
No,
yeah,
it's
it's a weird context, right? Because like we talked about, you mentioned the problem with Captain America, like it's not 1945, it's not 1945, but at points it's like, yes, this universe has dealt with superheroes for years, and then at other points it's like, no, this is a brand new occurrence, and we don't know how to manage it.
Yeah, it's really weird. Like a couple of times, like this is the most important thing that's ever happened, and I'm like, in the Infinity Gauntlet, half of the universe died. Like, why wasn't that?
Then it came back,
Hold on a second.
Just format-wise, I think it's interesting that this is so disjointed and spans so many books and so long. And like a year before this, we had DC's 52, which I think ultimately is how they should have written this. Just write one issue.
No. 52 is after this.
Huh?
52 is after this. This releases concurrently with Infinite Crisis.
But 52 is 2006, right?
No, 52 is 2008.
I thought it was 2006.
No,
2007, maybe?
Let me check.
52 starts right after Infinite Crisis, so it might have started while this was still running, but I know Civil War and Infinite Crisis were going at about the same time.
And I know that too because when the trades came out, I bought them both almost at the same time.
Okay, it might have been a bit of both then, because it says here that on Wiki that 52 starts in May of 2006.
I mean, keep in mind that's a whole year.
Civil War had lots of delays.
Yeah, exactly, and then Infinite Crisis would be before that. But like, if you wrote Civil War as one issue a week for a whole year and covered the whole gambit of what was going on, I think it would have made much more sense.
Boy, Eric, that's even worse if it's not cohesive and it contradicts itself a lot, and there were delays.
Yeah, if you look at the release dates for the issues, I want to say there is a 2 or 3 month gap between two of the issues.
That sounds about right, yeah.
Which also accounts for some of the problems is they can't just not publish comics for 2 or 3 months. So everyone else had to kind of keep moving forward with the story.
Yeah.
And then when you're finally putting out your issue, it's kind of playing catch up.
And so then you're doing the same thing that you often do in comics, which is having characters wherever you have them, but then they show up in other books and you just kind of ignore it and hope it all comes out in the wash. But this is, while you have this giant status quo shift for a big event, like,
Well, and it's funny because the character who is most out of character in this entire book is Daredevil. Yeah. Daredevil would never be anti-registration. He's a lawyer. He would be on the side of trying to fix the law or fight the law. He would not be where he is in this book. The Captain America book, which was Brubaker at the time, just ignores it. He just goes to France for. There's no Daredevil tie-ins. He just goes to France,
which is hilarious because he gets captured and thrown in the vault.
Yep. For years, Daredevil was masterful at dodging events. Daredevil from Bendis through Brubaker never ties into any events.
Steve, do you agree with what Eric said? Because I wouldn't mind dissecting that for a second and talking about it for a minute. That because Daredevil's a lawyer, he would not be where he is. Because like I didn't think about that. Like I didn't think of him as super out of character. I saw him as. I didn't see him as being particularly in character either. I saw him as just like they wanted a major villain to have a shock moment, or a major superhero where there's a big shock moment where he's in shackles and being marched off.
Well, I'm just thinking about Brubaker and Bendis' runs together around this time. It's definitely not consistent with any of that stuff. Like Daredevil has a thing about going around the law, but it's still discussing things within the context of how they're being presented. Like, She-Hulk is too gung-ho about registration. We don't, like, talk about her actually having conflicting feelings, but Daredevil would ultimately be on her side. It's just a matter of they don't stop and talk about it at all.
Yeah, I think
no one in this book is actually conflicted, really. Like, everyone really seems to be fully on one side or the other.
It reminds me a lot of, I'm not sure if you guys remember this, but in Season 3 of Buffy, there's an episode called Gingerbread, where Buffy's mom comes out to see her sleigh, and in the middle of the fight, there's these 2 kids that die, and so, like, everyone goes on massive discounts and fixes stuff. It's exactly that story, except that show realized that everyone was overreacting.
That was the point of it, was they were all being, like, magically possessed.
Yeah, exactly. And this event feels exactly like that, but no one seems to be understanding that they're not in character.
I thought it was weirdly heightened, like, over what this material usually is, but not fun. And so that was kind of problematic.
Reading this book was one of the most unenjoyable experiences I've had in a while reading a comic. I forgot how dour and joyless this book is.
Yeah, and I don't know that it has to be. Like, I get that we're talking about some heavy things and it's super political, but I feel like it's basking too much in its popular Marvel superheroes being really political. Like, look how important it is.
Well, I mean, I think part of it is that the cynicism is way too strong. Like the biggest issue I have with it is no one's stopping to talk about like why superheroes matter at all. Like if you're gonna have this discussion about whether or not to regulate them, you have to open up the question of why we use them in the first place outside of just beating up supervillains. And no one stops and does that. Like, Tony has that moment at the end where he's like, he wants to save the world, but that comes out of nowhere because no one's stopping to talk about what these people are trying to do. Like, why are they volunteers? Why do they put on the costume?
I'm going to say we talk about it a little bit, but not enough. I agree with you, but there is some talk about how there are... Early on, there's a line where there's... And I forget who has it, but there's a line where somebody says, there are thousands of supervillains. We can't... I think it's actually She-Hulk. There are thousands of supervillains. We can't expect the superheroes to stop doing what they do. We need them, but we need to regulate them and we need to train them better. So there is some talk about that, Steve, but I don't think.
Well, I mean, I don't mean that. I don't mean like superheroes in relation to fighting supervillains. I just mean like why would a person want to be a superhero in general?
Okay, that's not what you said. You said why we need them, and the reason we need them is because there's awful people with powers
why
that the police can't handle.
Comic books. Why do we need superheroes?
Yeah, sure. No, you're right. That's not there.
Like Captain America has a line near the end of this where he's like, I missed out on a chance to go do that Make-A-Wish Foundation thing and play baseball with a kid. Like, we need more moments like that so we understand what superheroes mean in this universe outside of just fighting supervillains.
See, I didn't even get that far. I kept getting hung up on why do we need superheroes in the aesthetic sense. Like, I kept wondering why, if you were going to pass this law, you wouldn't go all the way to, if they're going to be government agents and we're going to pay them, because that's what they're talking about, why are we going to let them dress up in goofy spandex suits? Like why not make them police officers?
There's a weird argument made, I think it's by Falcon, because it's either in the first issue or second issue, we kind of just montage through everyone giving like a point of view. And we have this weird thing with Falcon where he's like, they can't make us not wear costumes and have secret identities. That's tradition.
Yeah,
I was like,
that's his big argument.
Has nothing to do with what's being talked about.
Yeah, and especially considering like, a lot of these characters have meaning behind their costume that we explored in comics before this. Like, there's moments in Daredevil before this where he talks about why he chose a devil costume. And no one talks about that.
Well, and Steve, I get all that, but then what's weird is we're talking about creating new superheroes just so that we have, government superheroes, so we're, like, filling in places we don't have them. Like, why are we doing that? Why not just make them cops or something? I don't understand.
There's a couple of things that happen that maybe it's covered in other books. I don't know. But there's a couple of things that happen where, like, Thor shows up, and they're like, oh, that's just another one of their, like, product line superheroes for their super army. And I was like, when did that happen? When did they start creating superheroes?
And no one's outraged about Thor being a clone as much as they should be, right?
No.
Like, how come no one talks about Tony Stark just...
No, they're just angry that he killed Goliath.
In fact, the only person in my mind that is reacting to all of this... especially that stuff, like a real person, is Sue Storm.
Yeah. No, Sue Storm does a really good job talking about that. There's a great issue in Contradictions Iron Man where he talks to Thor about this.
She's definitely the most human character in the book.
Except that it's implied that she sleeps with Namor to get him to their side.
Wait, is it that she sleeps with him?
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of implied. I haven't read the Fantastic Four issue, so I don't know if it goes into it. But the last time that we see her and Namor, he says something about them having a relationship, and she goes, I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, I think you do. And then we don't see them again until Namor shows up on Cap's side.
I don't know if you can read that far into that, but if that is what happened, then she's pretty manipulative doing that right after. I mean,
it's Mark Millar. I think I can kind of read that into it.
No, I know that's a good point. I mean, like, but the implications of that after the way she left Reed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where she mentioned, where it's mentioned, we get this letter and she's like, I did all these nice things for you, including sleeping with you one more time, because I'm not necessarily planning on coming back. And I was like, oh wow, that's rough.
Speaking of that, I have a minor little kind of jokey nitpick. They give Johnny and Sue secret identities as a couple.
That I
And
couldn't
Johnny
believe
says,
that.
or Sue says, this is the creepiest thing that's ever happened to us. That's not true. Johnny married a woman that looks identical to his sister.
What?
Yeah, the puppeteer, his daughter looks exactly like Sue Storm, so much so that in early issues, they have her dress up as Sue Storm as a decoy.
Oh,
Like,
I
all she
remember
has to do is put on a blonde wig, and she looks identical to Sue Storm. Later, he marries her.
Yeah, I remember that.
You're right. That is creepier. See, I didn't understand that scene at all. I'm glad you brought that up because he's like, how come Shield couldn't come up with brother sister aliases? And I'm like, are they using aliases of people who really existed? They're not like making up because that's the only way they wouldn't be able to do that.
About the aliases thing.
Yeah,
because they keep saying that the aliases are for them when they're not doing the important things. I am so unclear in this book if they're actually fighting supervillains or if all they're doing is like having a war with the other superheroes. Like, are they just like meeting and having tactile strategies and movements against the pro-registration forces, or are they fighting supervillains like they should be? And just if they come into conflict, they will fight the other side.
I think it's both, right? Like, I thought there were scenes where both teams were going out and helping people, but then they were strategizing ways to attack the other one while that was happening.
I don't really remember seeing the pro-registration side going out and doing normal superhero stuff.
Never fights a supervillain.
No, they do. They do. At the opening, after pro-registration happens, Team Iron Man takes out an entire group of supervillains, and we see him, She-Hulk, Iron Man, all of them talking about how pro-registration is keeping everyone safer.
And also, Eric,
okay.
Eric, that's a good point because also toward the end, when Iron Man's side wins and he's talking about how they've kept crime down and stuff, like they must have been doing that. We just didn't see much of it. The only thing I remembered was I love how memorable this book clearly is. The only thing I remembered was somebody from Pro Cap's side going out and trying to stop bad guys, and it was the Patriot and getting taken out. I do kind of like that the first person that gets taken out on the Anti-Registration Act is someone called the Patriot. I kind of dig that.
Maybe my favorite moment in this entire book, because it's one of the few moments that I think is actually in character and addresses the fact that anti-registration is kind of crazy, because this book is very anti-registration. But they make this big deal out of the pro-registration guys using the Thunderbolts. They're using supervillains, and that's terrible. And then Cap recruits some supervillains, and Punisher just murders them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, no, those were bad guys. Like, that's crossing a line.
But Captain America does beat the crap out of him for it, right? Like, he doesn't agree with Punisher for doing that.
Yeah, and Punisher's whole reason for joining was he said, I wasn't taking sides until they started hiring bad guys. And then the second Cap hires bad guys, Punisher goes at him. I really like that.
That's actually really cool. Yeah, but I think that scene is also supposed to showcase that Cap is going too far, and that he's getting kind of out of touch, because that guy would never work with the Punisher. I mean, I can't handle the fact that he's on a team with Deadpool right now.
Well, there's a bit of history, and Fraction actually explores this quite a bit in his Punisher series that spun out of this. But while I don't think Cap would like the Punisher or really work with the Punisher has a huge amount of respect for Cap, and it's kind of been talked about. He is the reason that Punisher became a soldier. Like, he was an inspiration to Frank as a kid.
But I just mean that that's supposed to showcase that Captain America is being really extreme. Because you remember there was a lot of talk after Captain America died right after this that one of the people folks were speculating would become the new Captain America was the Punisher, especially because
the Punisher put on a Captain America costume.
But people thought that he would keep it and that he would be the official Captain America, and that's why they thought that.
Which is weird in retrospect, because Brubaker's run's really clearly building to Bucky being Cap all the way through.
Well, I think the people that thought that were people that didn't read that and only read this
I guess that's just weird. It's just weird for me because I remember there was clearly a mystery to it, but it felt like the most obvious mystery ever. Like, it didn't feel like Marvel intended to keep it a secret, but people started guessing out of nowhere.
I remember people thinking it was Falcon because they thought in a modern age you would want to have a black Captain America.
But yeah, that's true, and he was already Captain America before Bucky one time already, so I guess that would have worked too.
And he's Captain America now.
Yeah, he's Captain America now.
For like 2 more months.
See, I notice things now that the more movies that come out and stuff that never used to jump out at me, like, it never used to bug me. Like, the one superhero that dies in this is the token black guy. Like it happens in so many things.
Never come back. He's still dead.
Yeah, I mean, Goliath. I mean, that's a character I didn't know anything about, but like, I was sitting here reading this, and I had flashbacks to both Chronicle and First Class, and I was like, oh yeah, there's a reason people complain about the black guy always being the one person that gets killed. It happens all over the place.
I kind of want to read the Civil War Black Panther issues because his decision changes out of nowhere. He's very.
I don't even remember what his motivation was at the beginning of this.
In the beginning, it's I represent Wakanda and we can't take sides in American affairs.
Oh yeah, right.
And then at the end, it's screw it.
I just want to talk about that movie. That's all I want to do.
There's also a third side that no one really talks about. And there's Tony goes and meets with Emma Frost in the most conservative outfit she has ever worn in her entire life.
I didn't recognize her at first. I was like, who is? Oh, that's Emma Frost. Okay.
And she kind of says that the X-Men aren't taking sides. It's very strange that you have to be pro capturing, like, because he's trying to enlist them. And that's the thing is, there's no one in this book that's like, look, I think you're right. I will join up and I will register, but I'm not going to go capture other superheroes. No one has that point of view. It is gung-ho, you know, we want to recruit you to take down Captain America.
Well, it's weird because clearly the book knows it's a comic because there are so many moments where very obviously this is not about ideology anymore. It's about I want to beat the crap out of the person that I think is wrong. Like, there are moments where very clearly they're planning war battles as opposed to thinking about this in the context it'd be set in of we're trying to do the same thing but we keep meeting up with people. Like, there's a scene where Peter talks to Iron Man and when he's about to leave, and Iron Man's like, can't we be grown-ups and deal with this by talking? Which is extremely ironic in this comic.
Well, and that scene's so weird because we get one scene before that at Goliath's funeral where someone looks at Peter and he's looking over his shoulder and they just say, Peter's acting suspicious. The next time we see Peter, he is full costume in a broken apartment fighting with Iron Man. Like, we don't even get the scene where he tells Tony he's switching sides. We come in mid-scene.
We don't get that scene. We have these weird moments where the other Avengers are like, Peter's acting weird, and I don't know what they mean by he's acting weird. Like, he just randomly goes through his character arc without any of the inciting incidents.
Well, and he doesn't have an arc. I was surprised rereading this. I was like, Peter has, like, no dialogue. Like, he's on Cap's side, or he's on Tony's side, and we never really get him talking about why he's for that side. And then he switches sides, and we just get like, you know, I'm disgusted with myself for having sided with you, and that's it. Like,
well, so it's not nothing. It's just not enough. Like, what his reasoning for they kind of act like Spider-Man would just obviously be on that side because he's always worried about his loved ones and stuff.
My favorite unintentionally funny line in this book is when Spider-Man gets up front in front of everyone to take off his mask and goes, I've worked really hard to keep my secret identity secret. I was
Yeah.
like, you have
Hilarious.
like after Daredevil, you have done the worst job of keeping your identity secret.
So like they're playing it. I think they're playing it up like he's making a big sacrifice he thinks for the greater good. But you're right. There's not enough of a discussion as to why that is. And then when he comes back, where he's and like I flipped pages back and forth a couple times where I was like, does this make sense? Because it was just after Goliath's funeral where it's like, oh, one of us died, so clearly I'm on the wrong side. What's weird is we have that on both sides. Oh, one of us died, so I'm on the wrong side. I mean, it seems like the conclusion you would draw is maybe we should come to a compromise and stop fighting, not I'm wrong in my ideology. Like,
Yeah,
I didn't really understand that.
But then there's no book, because they all should have done that in the first place.
You're right, because I like that Captain America toward the end says we're no longer fighting for the people, we're just fighting. Like they've completely lost sight of why they're doing all this. But it should have come earlier than that.
I hate that scene. It is my least favorite scene in this entire book.
Why is that?
Because Captain America in this book is never fighting for the people. It is the public consensus that they want this law passed.
Yeah.
He is never on the side of the people. He's on the side of freedom, but not the people.
Oh,
and so when he gets to the end, he's like, we're not fighting for the people.
He could make an argument if you just make an argument. I mean, the thing is, this should be a talking book. I mean, like that. Let's just draw back and get that simple about it.
But if it was a talking book, it wouldn't have sold like it did.
It would have with the right artist and enough. Because the thing is, Infinity Gauntlet is a talking book. Let me just throw that out there. I mean, there's a lot of action in that, but there's a lot of talking in that. And the reason it feels more action-driven than it is because we're drawing 100,000 characters on every page, and it's really cosmic looking. You could do that with it, not the cosmic part, but you fill in with the action that makes sense to have action, and you make it really colorful and splashy. You can make a really talky comic book feel like a giant action thing and never have anybody throw a punch hardly.
Yeah, I mean it's harder to do, but it's possible, and they keep touting. Most of the reason this book sold so well is because it was marketed really well at the time.
Oh yeah, right.
So like you wouldn't have to have superheroes come to blows, and I imagine when we get to the Civil War movie, you could have very easily created some sort of alternative antagonist for these characters to fight, while at the same time they fight amongst themselves.
Well, and it feels like they didn't want to do that. They didn't want this to be a 7-issue version of the superheroes fight, and then they come together to fight a greater evil. But it also feels like they didn't have an ending. Yeah, like, I mean, it feels like they just knew conceptually, well, Cap can't win, because then what does that mean for the Marvel Universe? Like, when you really think about this book, it can never end with Cap winning, because there was a law passed. And
yeah,
I don't know what he's trying to accomplish. Like, is he trying to punch a law out of existence?
Yeah, like, he's got that thing about freedom, but part of the problem is, like, Mark Millar flip-flops what Captain America is doing a lot in this. Like, at points it's about the ideology, at points it's about the freedom to have a secret identity, but he keeps forgetting that Captain America already dealt with all of this. That's what the Winter Soldier story was. That's what the Red Menace story was.
That's also what what's his name? The Secret Society, the stuff in the 70s with Nixon.
The Illuminati.
Is it called the Illuminati?
I thought it was. Like the Doctor Strange Secret Society thing, right?
No. Captain America. In the 70s, where Nixon was the bad guy and he kills himself. Captain America quits being Captain America.
Oh, yeah. In the Englehart one. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Englehart. That's the name I couldn't think of. Yeah, the Englehart stuff. Yeah, this is well-tread ground for Captain America.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he's dealt with this before several times, and Mark Millar just seems to, like, forget that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, like, broadly, you can say that he's... and he talks about this, that he's mostly fighting because he doesn't think that his fellow superheroes that don't want to have to register and are doing what they think is the right thing and they should have the freedom to do that shouldn't be incarcerated. And so, like, that's that would be kind of the main crux of it. But I feel like wouldn't it make more sense if you went after S.H.I.E.L.D. over any superheroes? Like, I mean, I guess S.H.I.E.L.D. is, sending people after, but it just... You guys said that Maria Hill is kind of the bad guy if there's a central bad guy. I don't know why he's not just going after her.
Yeah, and it's very strange that he throws it all on Tony. Like, it's clearly Maria Hill. And the thing that you watch happen, it's very strange because there are things that happen in this book that are actually kind of smart, but then the book doesn't address, which is Tony's side spins wildly out of control in the lengths they're willing to go, and no one ever says that. Like,
you're right.
When Peter leaves, he doesn't say, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. You know, this has turned into something very different. He acts like the very decision of siding was a mistake.
All he had to do was take one look at Matt Gargan and be like, no.
Well, and did I miss the introduction of the prison? Because I feel like people just start talking about it.
They start talking about it. It's that part of the thing.
Well, they make it a mystery. They're like, what does 42 mean? And then suddenly there's a prison.
Yeah, like there's a point where
it's a mystery, and then randomly they start talking about it.
What was weird about the whole mystery thing? Why is it the number 42? Why is it? I'm like, if Douglas Adams is never evoked, this is hilarious. And then you get to the end, and that's never brought up. But I'm like, no, it's the number 42 because somebody likes Hitchhiker, obviously.
Well, and I love, because at the end, they finally reveal the mystery of why it's 42. That's because they come up with a list of 100 ways to make superheroes better. Number 43 is fix S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I came up with a list of 100 ideas on how to make our country better and make number 43 fix the government. Like, it's not an idea.
Such an arbitrary order. Why did we do this before we fix S.H.I.E.L.D.? Seems like if we fix S.H.I.E.L.D., doing this would be a better idea.
This isn't a good comic book.
No, it's not. But I mean, like it's not as bad as I remember it being. Like
it's not as bad as I remember it.
Is stuff around the time it came out, not the book itself.
Yes, that was the big thing that I had, was I realized that the book, for the most part, actually has more internal logic than I remembered it having because I'd read all these other things. Like, the book is pretty consistent on its take on registration. A lot of my issues with registration come from the fact that every other book has their own idea of how registration
and that every writer was so mad about the event itself that they never bothered to address it plainly. Like, the Captain America issues are nothing but 3 issues of Sharon Carter getting interrogated.
No, there's Winter Soldier meeting up with Nick Fury.
But that was a special. That wasn't part of the Captain America book. That was like the Winter Kills issue.
Oh. But no, he's Brubaker is not happy.
Yeah, no, he was upset about this for sure, and a lot of other people were too. Like, we'll talk about Iron Man, but Iron Man is one of those characters that after this event came out, everyone hated him unjustly.
And his book is
great too. I had this really odd experience with this because, of course, this is the first time I've read it since any of the Marvel movies came out. And the first time I read it, I remember thinking that Iron Man was wildly out of character. And this time I read it, and I felt like Captain America was wildly out of character. Like, this Iron Man matches up a little bit more with the Downey version, just in what his ideology is, not necessarily the way he goes about things. It's really weird because, Eric, you keep saying that the book is, really anti-registration, and it is, and I think it's supposed to be, but then you also, and I totally agree with this, and I was going to make this point too, but you also brought up the fact that Tony Stark keeps doing, really scary things on their side, and they never talk about how scary they are. And I had to keep reminding myself that the Registration Act is supposed to be a bad thing, and that at the end, the good guys don't really win. It doesn't really read that way unless you read between the lines, I think.
And we never.
What was really weird reading it this time for me was I felt like it's a lot smarter than I thought it was, but it doesn't actually feel like exploring any of its ideas. I remember feeling like it was really one-sided, and reading it this time, and maybe it's just because it's so cynical, but it does feel like Mark Millar actually understands, kind of the nuances of both sides a little bit, and we do get moments on both sides where both sides are kind of right and kind of wrong, but the book keeps reinforcing that it is Tony who is wrong.
Yeah, and then the rest of the Marvel Universe after this follows suit. Like, it's not a problem with the story, it's a problem with the way it was handled by Marvel. Because, like, every book after this is talking about how Tony is the worst person alive, and that he is the biggest supervillain in the universe.
Yeah, JMS said, writing Spider-Man, he said Tony Stark is Marvel's Lex Luthor.
Yeah.
But it was weird because this reading, I found myself almost not being able to take Mark Millar's Captain America seriously. Like, he just didn't read like Captain America at all to me. He seemed
he doesn't.
He seemed to me like the Mark Millar out of continuity, like stand-in parody of Captain America. Like, and that's one of the things that makes this book really weird for me, is that I've now read some other Mark Millar things, and he does this a lot, where he in continuities he makes up will have analogs for characters, and then he'll try to be like with Kick-Ass or whatever, where like, here's what superheroes would really be like if they were in the real world or whatever, and his kind of cynical take, and he always talks about how cynical he is. And then here it's like we have analogs. It's like the characters are analogs for themselves, and in Captain America especially, it's like he's his own analog.
There's a touch of like Ultimate PTSD Captain America from his run that I can see in here, but you're right. Like in the main Marvel universe,
I've never read that.
Like a parody of it.
Some of his lines seem almost like if Frank Miller was writing Captain America.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's got like this weird, scary war general kind of vibe that I just never get off that character.
And Eric, that's why I didn't have as much of and I did the first time I read it, but it's so weird the reading I had of this today. Like, I didn't have as much of Iron Man is clearly supposed to be on the wrong side this time, because I found Captain America kind of scary.
I did too, but well, and again, it's probably, I'm still looking at this through the lens of what happened then and all of the other books. Yeah. Maybe this book doesn't really take sides, but it makes both sides look really bad.
Well, and that happens whenever you don't have characters talking enough about things, because when characters don't seem like real characters or real people, it makes it very difficult for us as the reader to draw any conclusions at all. By the way, I feel the need to mention right now that we have exactly 42 viewers, and I want to know why that is. I mean, that's like it's a big mystery. I want to know why that is.
We made a list of 100 viewers we wanted, and
oh my god, that scene is so much dumber in my mind now that you brought that up. Like, we had 100 things, and it's like, how can we be sure they're all good ideas too? It's like you got to 42. I want to know what the other 41 were, and if they were good things. Like, we've already gotten that far, because they make it out like we have a long way to go. I'm like, I think you might have ruined the universe with your other 41, given how this is turning out. Like,
can I talk about Iron Man armor for 5 seconds?
No, yeah, go right ahead. Sure, absolutely.
I have 2 things about Iron Man armor. One of them is just an interesting little historical bit. Since the Iron Man movie, we've had the faceplate lift up like this, and in this it doesn't work that way. It's a full like helmet piece that opens up like this. We'll never see that again, ever. It will forever be the faceplate lifting up, because that's what the movies do, and that's what we universally recognize as how Iron Man's helmet opens. I just thought that was an interesting little thing. They disable and like destroy Stark technology and Reed Richards technology insanely. Like, the Punisher shows up with a stealth suit that he got from Nick Fury, I think, and he's just like, "There's no way they'll ever detect me." I'm like, they are the 2 smartest people in the world, and they're both inventors. What do you mean you have a stealth suit they can't detect?
There's another weird armor bit where the kid that dies, the mom shows up and gives Iron Man a toy, like an Iron Man figure. Yep. And she says, like, this is his favorite figure since he was a kid. I'm like, but that's the Extremis armor. He just got that a few months ago. Why is the toy?
I thought about that, and then I was like, well, the kids that got blown up were in preschool, or was it kindergarten? They're little kids.
They looked
so
old.
Theoretically, it could have just been like a year ago.
But she says it's been his favorite toy since he was 3 years old, or she makes it sound like it's been a long time.
Hey, you go to kindergarten when you're 5.
But he makes it sound like it's been a long time. He hasn't had that armor that long at this point, so it's weird that he would already be like an extremis toy out there.
She's awful, and I remember there was this huge theory when they announced Secret Invasion that she was a Skrull, because she just keeps showing up and like keeping Iron Man on this path.
Yeah, it felt like that Buffy episode where like she's the evil Hansel and Gretel child possessing Tony to do evil things.
But then when we get to the last scene in this book, it seems like she's good, and like she says, like, Tony, you're a good guy, you're a good person, and the book seems to think like that's a thing, like that is correct.
And the book doesn't seem to like understand how scary that ending really is. Like Reed Richards and Hank Pym and Tony Stark can just come up with something and take over the world like they did by the end of this.
Yeah.
Oh, and I hate how much I hate that reveal where Hank Pym was Hulkling. I want to say the whole time. That's not the whole time. It's for some time, but we never get any hints towards that. And it's weird because he's like, well, I've been Hank Pym since this morning. But Captain America's like, we had a mole too. And I'm like, well, how did you, like, really just this morning he was able to gather all of this information?
It seems like it would be really difficult if you're Hulkling, of all people, to pull that off for any amount of time past like 25 minutes. Like,
yeah, like I don't know how his powers work, but there's no way he can pretend to be smarter than he is, can he?
Yeah, exactly. There's no like forgetting that.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, he shouldn't be able to be. That would be like okay, the Thing is going to get transforming powers and pretend to be Reed Richards. Like, how long is that going to last? Like, there's no way. I'm looking at this and I found a panel that I wanted to mention, and I'm glad I remembered this. Now I'm just asking a question. I'm not making fun of the disabled when I say this. I just don't think this works. So Daredevil is going to pretend to be an engineer?
Yeah, I thought the exact same thing.
Like, I don't understand that.
I don't think they actually have these jobs, right? Like, they're just fake identities. He never actually has to do any engineering.
Okay, yeah. You're immediately going to look really suspicious if you go around and tell people, as clearly a blind man, that you're an engineer.
Oh, I was just thinking because he's a lawyer and he has no engineer training. I wasn't even thinking blind.
Job. Imagine that's his cover. So he's gonna and like, okay, maybe let's explore this, because I don't know if I'm right about this as a criticism, but if they're gonna give them like, oh, actually no, I'm sorry, never mind. Never mind. Scratch what I was going to say. But yeah, blind engineer makes zero sense at all. Anyway, so it's hard for me to buy that the government would really expect people to be superheroes 24/7, and like you're talking about, it's spearheaded by S.H.I.E.L.D. You're talking about a covert ops organization that keeps secrets as a matter of course, and like we've got to out everybody. Like, I get regulating superheroes, but why do you have to straight up out their identities? Like tell the government.
Well, that's something that's really
is it ambiguous about that?
Book.
Like, yeah,
because it keeps being said to Spider-Man, how do you think Aunt May or Mary Jane are going to feel about the Vulture showing up? And then at the end of the book, Tony says, well, I have the list. Like, I wouldn't trust anybody else with the list of secret identities. For the majority of this book, it acts like you will just be a celebrity now. And then at the very end, they're like, well, no, we have a list of all the secret identities. We know who they are. We're not just telling everyone.
Especially when Reed Richards is so dismissive of it, where he's like, wow, we've been public forever. We've had no problems with that.
Galactus has never shown up at our door.
If you took a poll of people that have heard of this book, like whether they've read it or not, even I think people that have read it, but it's been a while. If you took a poll, I think the majority of people would describe the Registration Act as the thing that forces superheroes to out their secret identities. Like, that's how not clear this book is about that. And I think that's what everybody
I
remembers
think
it
the book
as.
is really flip-flopping on whether it is or is not about that.
Yeah, that's
Which again
really problematic.
is something that could be explored. The idea of misinformation in the media, and some people think that they're just gonna out all of us.
Yeah. Oh, then also
Because
just
they
the
don't
idea
have
of the
the facts,
government.
and that's what they heard from someone.
And then even on the other
But the
side,
book never
even if
actually
it's
goes
Tony
into
just
that.
like holding on to these secret identities, and you have the issue of databases, and like, is it a safe thing to have all of this information collected in one
Well, it's in
place?
his brain,
Yeah, like, is that safe?
so Norman Osborn can't get it. It's
Yeah,
in his
like, at
brain.
least with the Illuminati, we took each of the stones and hid them someplace.
Like, there's some
Well, he hid it in his brain.
interesting
Oh,
political issues in here that no one talks about whatsoever.
What now?
There's really interesting political issues in this book that no one talks about whatsoever. Like, it's just about secret identity or no secret identity, but there's so
Yeah.
much more to that concept.
Yeah, there's a lot more, and a lot of it's swept under the rug, where you'll get like a panel about it, and then we just brush it aside. Like, if you did this now, I feel like it would be 12 issues.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I also feel like
Well,
it would go between more books, and the tie-ins would feel like more necessary tie-ins. I mean, I've always said this. I appreciate an event where I could read the main tentpole book and not have to read anything else and get the gist of it. But this is all gist and not even enough gist. Like, that's really problematic.
Yeah.
Like
Well, it's kind of like the first 2 issues are the beginning of the story. The last 2 issues are the end of the story. The 3 issues in between that are just like high points of the story that's being told everywhere else in the Marvel Universe.
Yeah, which is what Frontlines was supposed to be, and from what I've told, because I haven't read that, but from what I'm told, all the important story character stuff happens there in the book that's supposed to be nothing but action.
Well, Frontline is about Ben Urich reporting on it, as I recall.
Was that what it was?
Is it all that?
Yeah,
'Cause I
Frontlines is the
remember
newspaper. There's a newspaper called Frontlines that is headed by Ben Urich, and it's them like following this event.
Okay, I haven't read that. From what I'm told, it makes this better.
Yeah,
See,
I read like
that
one
was
or
my
two
whole
issues when it was
thing.
coming out.
Is like, I didn't know how to. We've been pretty down on this. I didn't even know before we started talking how to critique this, because I felt like I hadn't read all of it.
Yeah. No, it was weird. Like, as
I
soon
wish
as
one of us had read the novelization and could recommend whether that does a better job of presenting.
Oh, is
this
there a
to-
novelization? I'll definitely read that, because
Yeah, it was actually the first book that Marvel put out in its novel line.
Who wrote it?
I'll have to do that on
Steve
Read a Book at
Moore.
some point. Who now?
Steve Moore wrote it,
Steve Moore.
who's not an author I really know.
Yeah, I don't know who that is.
I don't know who that is.
Well, guys, we've been at this almost an hour. Why don't we go ahead and give some final thoughts and wrap up?
Well, can
Aaron,
Steve and I
you have
real
any-
quick talk about the confession?
Oh, I forgot. You wanted to talk about that. Yeah, go ahead.
Because if you want to read Civil War, I highly recommend getting the confession. I'm sure it's in one of the New Avengers trades. I'm sure you can find it in back issue bins or on the internet. It's not a hard book to find, but it's a book nobody ever talks about. It is essentially 2 stories. One is Tony going and talking to Cap after Cap has died. He's talking to his corpse and explaining himself. And then the other half is a conversation that happens when Cap first gets thrown in prison, where Tony's kind of acting high and mighty, and they're just being really snotty to each other. And the second story ends with, Tony, was it worth it? And the first half is all Tony explaining why it wasn't worth it, and how Tony has known for years that something like this was going to happen. He didn't know what it was, but there was going to be a big war of super people. At some point it had to happen, and he's been preparing for it, and how he's really sorry. And Fraction kind of picks up on this in his run, is that when Tony Stark comes out of Civil War, it is not that Tony Stark would switch sides or not be pro, registration, not even be the head of registration, but he wishes he did it better and a different way. And that's kind of what this book is just Tony talking. It's just a talking heads book which is what this whole book should have been.
Yeah, the Tony side of it's a lot better than the Captain America side, because Captain America still has that weird angry general vibe. But the stuff with Iron Man where like he's tearing up and he's talking about like how they were friends and he sees everything into the future, because how can he not? And like how the role of invention plays into trying to anticipate everyone's problems. It's so classic Tony Stark. It's perfect.
Yeah. Well, and it's really fascinating that he and Reed Richards line up so much. Yeah.
And that's the thing that I wish we did more of. Like, there's an episode called The Private War of Dr. Doom in Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes that's all about Reed Richards and Tony Stark being the same person.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, because I like Reed Richards was one of the things I really latched onto in this book, and how he's trying to control everything, and he thinks that that's his job, because like there are so few people in the world that can do what he and Tony Stark can do, that he thinks it's being responsible to create a world that is as perfect as he can make it, and freedom almost never even enters into the equation. It's like he doesn't even think about that.
That's really interesting, because I came away really not liking Reed Richards in this book. Kind of for the same reasons that you found him interesting, was I felt like he was someone who seemed very... like, he wasn't concerned with the politics of it or the people. He was just, like, almost every line of dialogue he has is, oh man, we came up with this really cool idea. And he doesn't think about the consequences at all, which I guess maybe is an interesting character, but within the book itself, I really didn't care for him.
Yeah, I don't know
that
that it really
absolutely how Millar writes Reed Richards in the Ultimate Universe.
Yeah, because I'm with you. I don't know if it works in the context of this, because nobody gets enough time to really make their case. And so, that's kind of problematic, and it's hard not to read stuff into it, because you see glimmers of fascinating and you want it to be more expounded upon. But maybe I've just read, enough stuff with Reed Richards that he has that kind of detached, oh, look at this neat thing I made, and let's run with it because I made it, kinds of stories, that it seemed a little bit classic, but the Mark Millar scary spin on the classic Reed Richards.
I feel like Reed Richards, and then he has the moment at the end with the letter to Sue, but there's nothing to bridge those two things.
Oh yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Sure.
I feel like Reed Richards, especially in the aughts, became a lot like Professor Xavier. Like, I feel like both of those characters are characters that writers came on and said, look how creepy they've been for 4 decades, and nobody is mentioning this.
Yeah.
And they both got really creepy and dark.
Yeah,
to the extent that Ultimate Reed Richards just straight out became a bad guy.
Yeah. Well, and it makes sense to go that far with those characters, sometimes, because superhero stories are so often about whether or not power ultimately corrupts, and we're dealing with, in the case of those characters, mental power as opposed to just physical superpower. And we make, especially in Marvel Comics, we make intelligence and knowledge much scarier than anything else.
And that's partly why
Richards, having absolute knowledge but not having absolute power is paradoxical.
It's
No, but that's partly why the confession stuff with Tony works so well, is that he's talking about like the burden of being as smart as he is.
Eric, do you have anything else you want to say about this book that you didn't get around to before we close up?
I'm gonna say, rereading this book, I guess wrapping up my thoughts, rereading this book, it's a lot more interesting than I thought it was. I came away where I've read this book 2 or 3 times, and my memories of it were a book that made me angry, a book I really didn't like. Reading it this time, it's more a book I'm disappointed in. I really like a lot of the ideas, and I wish this was either longer or just by someone different who was more interested in the dialogue of it than the explosive action of it.
Steve, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
I kind of have the same thing with Eric. Like, I started reading comics right before this, and I loved everything until this, which just made me angry, but it's not the book's fault, it's Marvel more so. So yeah, I'm just kind of feeling nothing about it. I kind of wish I enjoyed the spectacle of it more, but Steve McNiven's art's really inconsistent throughout it.
I don't like it.
Yeah, like in
a lot of
pages it's
places.
amazing, and then in pages it's really awkward, and he draws.
Yeah, there are a couple of splash pages I really liked, but yeah, overall.
Yeah, I was
Yeah, like
surprised because I like Steve McNiven, or at least I like Old Man Logan, and I remembered at least this book looking good. And then when I reread it, I was like, oh, I really don't like Steve McNiven's art.
I didn't like the way he drew faces, especially Captain America. There are places where people look just straight up disproportionate.
Yeah, no.
There's one point where he's yelling at someone, and he's surprised, and his face is split, where one half of his face is surprised, the other half is yelling.
Sue Storm has that a couple of times where she's supposed to look scared or serious in whatever given situation. You can never read her face.
Well, Eric, see, that's how we get into his head to see it from his perspective. See, so like one side is what other people see, and the other side is what he's actually feeling. You see.
It's like when Spider-Man has a spider sense. That's half Peter Spider-Man.
Yeah, the Spider-Man head. That's exactly what I was thinking the whole time you said that. Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry, Steve. Did you have anything else to say? Because we interrupted you.
No, that's about it. It's just I'm feeling nothing about this book.
Yeah, I had the same thing, and I had a really hard time reading it. Not reading it, like, I know how to read. Which means, like, I had a hard time developing an interpretation and deciding how exactly I felt about it, because it felt really disjointed, and I felt like it just kept skipping like a record. And I also want to say that if I ever get a chance to write a Daredevil story, I'm going to write a story about Daredevil as a blind engineer. Everybody, thanks so much for watching. Hope you had a good time with our live comic vault. We've never done one of these, I don't think. I mean, Dan and I used to do live shows on new comics, but I don't think we've ever done one of these like this, and this is fun. We'll do this again in front of an audience.
With the Ultimates. You gotta read the Ultimates.
And we are going to do the Ultimates soon, so that might be the next one of these. I think it might be fun, you guys, to keep doing some of these, especially like the panel vaults live like this. I don't like not being able to show you artwork, but it is fun to do these kinds of things with folks watching, and maybe we'll take some questions and comments and stuff next time. But we kind of did this more as just a regular video, but live, because we came up with this, doing it today anyway, at kind of the 11th hour, and I didn't know if we were even giving anybody time enough to read it again. So next time we'll make sure to give you some time and some notice so that you can make sure to read the thing before we talk about it, and then we'll interact with you. Join us on Sunday night for the next episode of Zero Hour. We'll be talking about all the news and trailers and stuff from this last week. We had a fantastic turnout on Sunday, and we're very excited to keep doing that show for you. And in the meantime, I'm Captain Logan, and this was Steve Baxey.
Good night, everybody.
And Eric!
Night.
Bye, folks.